hot takes, Final Fantasy XIV edition. You have them, I react to them. Hello, everybody. I am Jmulls, and enough preamble. Let's do this. First up, we have at HippieChick73, who says, my hot take is the same as always. I think they need to kill the world and start the game over in the future. Maybe the remaining Asians succeed in rejoining the shards in one big crash, not Bandicoot, and we start again in the rejoined world. I think a prequel game as a mobile app would also be fun, making a prequel set in the Unsundered world. Okay, we're gonna get through this take in order here. I can see where some people are coming from when they call for a complete world revamp or for Square Enix to just like start again, and yeah, like they've done it before, let's be fair, with A Realm Reborn. And if they do it again, maybe we could possibly remedy a lot of the spaghetti code issues they always reference for why they do things so slowly or why they do things in a certain way to begin with. But I think when it concerns the overall content the game gets, and a lot of the design philosophies behind Final Fantasy XIV, I don't really think, if you take issue with those elements, or even the story right now, that a world reset would remedy any of that. I can understand why some people can like come to this conclusion, right? Especially after a big narrative arc like the Hydaelyn and Zodiac arc, with that concluding and Dawntrail being, let's call it, polarizing at best for a lot of people. Some people just go, well, if we start all over again with a whole new world and a new cast of characters, maybe that could like rejiggle everything and make it in a way that is far more palatable and pleasing for more people at this point. I don't really think that's the case, and I don't think it's necessarily needed in the game right now, because outside of those issues that are a result of spaghetti code that we just talked about, I think a lot of the issues that maybe you and also I have with the game right now, I think those can be remedied with just different design philosophy moving forward. And when it concerns the actual story, I feel as if the quality of 7.2 and 0.3 were a massive step up compared to 0.0 and 0.1, and I am really interested to see where they go with the Winter business and all of that. I don't really feel as if a world refresh is necessary. The issues that I had with 0.0 and 0.1 weren't going to be remedied by just wiping the slate clean. My issues with dialogue, pacing, and the decisions that were made to focus on certain elements of the story to an excessive degree compared to what I would have preferred Dawntrail's story having been. I talk about it a lot, but did we need entire storylines about how to tame an alpaca and then having that be done off screen? Did we need an entire quest line about building a float? Did we need an entire quest line about making a taco? For an expansion that is like advertised as the summer vacation, I personally would have preferred it to be way more Indiana Jones in comparison to what we ended up getting, which felt like Side Quest Simulator until we got to like Alexandria. And if the story had remained that, then maybe I would also be advocating for larger, more systemic changes to the narrative of Final Fantasy XIV to get it back on the right track. But like I said before, and like I've actually said a lot, I really enjoyed the 0.2 and 0.3 story, especially considering like the foundation that they were working off of, right? And the fact that I enjoyed them so much, I think that really does speak to the corner they have turned narratively speaking. I know not everyone's going to agree, but not everyone liked the story beforehand. There are always going to be people that are upset, especially in the modern internet. I think the game story-wise is in a far better position right now, and a lot of my issues mechanically speaking, like job design, content cadence, and stuff like that, I don't feel as if a world refresh would necessarily remedy that. Maybe it would even make it a little bit worse because of the resources that would have to be allocated to do a world refresh. I just think we need a really good expansion. Also, as someone who really loves Nier, the idea of another mobile game having possibly really important story wounds me to my very core. Like, I'm still upset that Nier 3 was a gacha mobile game that was absolutely dreadful in my opinion, and is now no longer even available to play. So if I want to peruse and actually experience the story, I have to go to various websites to basically get the SparkNotes version, and it upsets me to my core. I personally can't stand it when series that I love just have some random mobile game where there are massive developments in the story, so if you don't play the mobile game, you have to either get the SparkNotes version or you'll just be missing out. It annoys me to my core. I do not want that to be the case with Final Fantasy XIV. That is my personal preference. Personally speaking though, if they want to make a prequel game for the Unsundered world, I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to that. I don't feel as if we need more for that world. I wouldn't say no to it though.
I promise to return.
Next up, better not be a hot take, we have at Diceboy22, who says, not really a hot take, better be, but I want Rune Knight as the next tank. Yes, 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 all kinds of yes. Look, as someone who has Celes as one of my favorite characters in Final Fantasy from 6, I want Rune Knight. Rune Knight could be so dang cool. I want a tank that uses various elements to enchant their weapon. That could be so dang cool. Also, as someone who predominantly plays tanks in this game, having a new tank to play around with, I wouldn't necessarily oppose that idea. Personally, I want either Rune Knight as the next tank, or if we're going to continue to lean into the sci-fi side of things, I would want some kind of Gundam/mech-based tank job. So yeah, basically that one guy from Arcadia. Just give me that and I would be happy.
I promise to return.
Next up, we have a hot take that I entirely agree with. We have at BioCajun86, shout out to the anime 86, who says, hot take number 3. The dev teams are too afraid of going back and using older content that on paper was a fantastic idea, but when launched was not very well received due to poor execution. Island Sanctuary is a fantastic example of this. Instead of putting extra time and resources into building out brand new content that you run the risk of being poorly executed all over again, just use something that you've done before and just make it better. But give the community a way of providing you the feedback of what would truly make it better. Hell, I would even argue that they should use some of the older zones and implement something that's fresh and new into them to bring new life into those zones. I entirely agree with like most of the things in this take. And it was the same exact issue that I had with World of Warcraft for the longest time, where you would introduce interesting concepts, but there was some part of the design philosophy at the time of that content coming out that crippled it, or the execution just wasn't up to snuff. And without actual further iteration and working off of player feedback, those systems never went anywhere interesting. Whereas in Final Fantasy XIV, I think the same logic applies. Like, think about grand companies and how cool of a concept that could be in Final Fantasy XIV, but it just hasn't gone anywhere. What about LeaveQuest and Guildhest? I had to look up the name because they're so underutilized, I forgot what they were called. Guildhests. Were they anything special when they were first implemented into the game? No, not really, but do they have potential to introduce some kind of interesting gameplay mechanism into the modern state of Final Fantasy XIV that the game is probably really craving? Yeah, sure. You don't have to just do them one for one as they were all those years ago. We can change the meta up a bit. We can tinker with them, iterate on these core ideas, and do something interesting with them. I think the idea of having a little mini dungeon scenario type of content in Final Fantasy XIV could go places. It's like World of Warcraft introduced an entire new endgame system with delves in the latest expansion, The War Within, and I don't think Final Fantasy XIV should necessarily just try to implement that one for one. Find something that works within the formula and structure of Final Fantasy XIV. Even if it doesn't end up like achieving the same goals as like delves in WoW, I do think something new could really come into its own for Final Fantasy XIV, and it might not even require an entire new piece of content. It might just be a case of going back and looking at what the game has already done and saying, how can we do this again, but possibly better this time? I'm also right there when it comes to the idea of finding some new use for the zones. Final Fantasy XIV often has beautiful zones you want to lose yourself in, or at least I do. And then after the leveling experience, unless you want to farm fates, I guess, or hunt trains, whoop-de-doo, the game just doesn't give you interesting gameplay mechanisms to interface with the world, that it spends so much time during the main story trying to get you to fall in love with it. I do think that is a massive disservice to what the story is trying to do. And I wouldn't even mind necessarily seeing content we ordinarily see relegated to like field operations or cosmic exploration and stuff like that just implemented into the base zones. Again, maybe not one for one, but like some version of those systems for the base zones, and I think that could really round out that initial expansion lull a lot of people complain about, rightfully so, where we have to wait till like 0.25 for a new big piece of endgame content that isn't just another raid. I'm not saying it will be easy or just something you can flip a switch overnight and remedy. It will require time and effort and tender love and care, but it's an MMO. Every good thing should. I think what Final Fantasy XIV needs right now more than ever is just more. More of the game, more new ideas, but also going back to look at older ideas and saying, how can we make this work in the modern day? Instead of just throwing so many systems aside. It's like Island Sanctuary, yeah, okay. It was never going to live up to the potential that people wanted it to have. However, does the core concept of Island Sanctuaries deserve the current state that it has right now? I feel like when it comes to Island Sanctuaries, what people just wanted was essentially island housing. If they can manage to find a way to morph that system into something akin to that, I think that would be a great way of reintroducing that content.
I promise to return.
Those definitely were some takes for Final Fantasy XIV, and here's where you can come in. Leave a comment down below with your own hot take about the future and the current state of Final Fantasy XIV, and I may react to them in a future video. I want your spiciest, your hottest, your most boiling takes about FF14. And while you're down there, if you want to stay tuned for that video and future Final Fantasy XIV and MMO coverage, you should leave a like and subscribe. Follow me on TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, Jmulls G, Instagram, Jmulls Gaming. I have a Discord in the description down below. And speaking of hot takes and speaking of MMOs, did the latest expansion for World of Warcraft, The War Within, fail as a story? No. And if you want to hear my thoughts about this, you should check out this video right here for more. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.